All right, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable. Today, we are joined by Tony Pietrocola of AgileBlue. We're going to be having a conversation about the role of artificial intelligence in compliance and cybersecurity. Tony and I, before we went live, we're talking about snow, Cleveland, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Tony being really excited about next year and tackling some things that you have going. Tony, where did your entrepreneurial journey begin, and what part of entrepreneurship attracted you to business ownership?
Well, first of all, Zach, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, especially after the game last night. So I appreciate you. You rallied.
I had to drag my sorry ass out of bed with a frown on my face and turn it upside down after that whomping we got from you guys.
Yeah, no, it was all right, man. I felt pretty good. I didn't get a lot of sleep, but that's okay. You don't mind missing sleep for that. Zach, first job out of college, I went to work for Apple, and I'm old. So this was 1997, right when Jobs came back. And, I don't think there's any other company in the world, probably now something that Elon Musk owns, where you go to work for an organization and all day long they're beating in your head that you should probably become an entrepreneur, right? So my first job out of school, you're 22, 23 years old. That's being beat in your head for a few years. So left Apple and started my first company, 10th floor. And I'd like to say there was some extraordinarily romantic reason why we started this company and why it was so great. It wasn't. It just sounded good. We were in the middle of the dot-com. There was the bust, and then the boom started happening again. It just seemed like the right time to do something. So, opportunistic. Became an entrepreneur, which I don't even like the word. I just think you're a business person, and have been starting businesses since. So that's the journey. All to Apple.
All to Apple. Was that your first role with Apple ever?
Yeah, I was a systems engineer. So I was the technical guy trying to help the sales guys get deals. But really, I was just a peddler. Still am. I'll sell anything, right? So at the end of the day, that's how it all started.
That's awesome. So you were the technical guy helping the salespeople, or the salesperson helping the technical people?
Yeah, back then we had those old models, right? The sales guys would go in and meet with people. They bring an engineer with them so we can describe why Apple's so cool. Back then, though, Apple was not cool. It was pretty. We were pretty beat up back then. That was pre-iPad, Pod, all the pre-eyes. We were pretty bad back then, so it was actually a tough place to work. But yeah, just getting people excited about the technology we had and see if we can get their budget.
How did you end up? So Apple obviously now is much further than it was in 97. Was it right out of school? How did you hear about them? I mean, that's like kind of an amazing place to land.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was great. So think about it. Back then, and this is 1997, the internet was ready to start booming, right? So, everybody wanted to be in tech. So it just seemed like the place to be. I've always used whatever Apple product up until that point. And let's just be candid. When Jobs came back, they got an $150 million infusion of money from Microsoft, and they were hiring everybody. So it wasn't like I was good, bad, or whatever. I was just a body. So let's get a warm body who kind of knows what he's doing. We'll figure out a way to train him up. That's basically how it got started.
It's a common strategy in the private equity and like scaling quickly space in tech to grab the labor talent uh, with capital and have a really strong team because you've taken the risk on putting that money out forward to have the assets in
Yeah,
terms of people, and we still
absolutely.
see that today for sure.
Well, I think you're definitely seeing it with AI. I mean, you can't look, the average company like mine, can't go out and hire $450,000 AI developers like Google can these days, right? So you got to go get the youngsters, you got to go get the people you can afford, and you work on training them up and building whatever skills, whether it's AI or sales or whatever it might be. But AI is so prevalent these days. I think you're seeing that again just because it's booming and there's not enough people to fill the roles.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. How, from your perspective, because you've had a lot of time into the tech industry, how would one adjust the economy in such a way that there could be talent going to everybody? Or is that just not a way that it should be?
I look at it like this, and obviously, I went to college. I had two daughters in college. So when I'm about to say I'm a bit of a hypocrite, but when you look at some of these very technical folks these days, man, I mean, this generation, again, I'm older, right? So this younger generation, man, they just get tech, they get programming, they understand how this stuff works. I would never encourage someone to not go to college, but I think college, from a perspective of technologists, if you're a techie, if you're good in math, if you just see the world through that type of engineering prism, I think you can start making immediate impacts. I was just talking this morning about somebody who went to a community college for like a year, but the dude was programming since he was 10 years old. He did his first GitHub commit at 10 years old. And this guy's a fantastic programmer now. So if you think about that mindset, I think you're seeing a lot of people like that. Again, I'm never going to tell anybody not to do something, do whatever you want to do, but I think you can see more people really get into technology because I don't necessarily know if you have to go 4 years to learn it.
Hmm. What recommendations would you give to either students or young folks that are considering a career in technology or considering college, and then, or the other side, folks that are having to bring in people that may not have the strengths and skills that they wish they had? You talked about bringing people in and training and developing, which is something that I think is vital if you want to be able to scale and have long-term health in your business, because you're always going to have to bring in somebody that you need to be able to teach. So if you had advice for businesses needing to hire, or young folks choosing where to learn or how to take those first steps, do you have any
Mhm.
recommendations for that?
Yeah, and I'll get really old school here. A guy who ran a company by the name of Lehman Brothers, which we all know what happened to Lehman Brothers in '08, but ran it in the
I
'70s and
don't,
'80s.
because I'm uninformed. I will happily raise my hand and be ignorant and ask you to give us just a quick synopsis.
Yeah, well, the CEO, Alan Greenberg, Ace Greenberg, one of the Hall of Fame Wall Street guys, had this saying: as long as you're hardworking, as long as you're smart, and as long as you like money, I'll take you. I will teach you finance. Well, I think it's the same concept with technology. And I don't care if you went to college, maybe you got your start in a 2 year, 4 year, maybe you even got your start in the trades. I don't care. You're hard smart, or you're hardworking, you're smart, and you kind of like money a little bit. You put that type of person together with an organization that will invest in you, you can turn people into, I really believe this, whatever. Now, they might not be an engineer or programmer because your mind might not work like that, but how can you be something else within a sales organization? You absolutely can. I think those are the three qualities, my friend. And I think if more people had those, We'd have less labor issues like we like. I think when you look at those three things, though, today's mix might be lacking somewhere along the way.
Yeah, it's tough right now for sure. Things come so easy in so many different aspects of today, whether it be the availability. I mean, it's the availability of everything. Dopamine's probably the quickest way to summarize it. It takes away some of that, some of the reality of what's required to get what you want, and it takes hard work and effort. And I like to talk about, your attention being a muscle, your brain being a muscle, and if you want something to be strong and have endurance, you have to flex it over time. And grit and tenacity, I think, is an extremely important entrepreneurial quality, entrepreneurship, business person quality.
Yeah.
And it is harder and harder to come by natural situations in day-to-day life that cause people to flex that muscle.
I completely agree. And I think when you look at people starting businesses today as compared to, say, let's just say 20 years ago, I think people maybe had a little bit more, and I'm not going to use the word hardships, like, you had to go fight in a war, because that's that's an ultimate type hardship. But maybe life was a little bit harder, which, gave you more obstacles to overcome. So you were more tenacious. You looked at something and said, you know what, this is going to be tough, but I can figure it out. Today, it seems like maybe things are just a little too easy for a lot of folks, right? A lot easier than they had been maybe in our past. And sometimes that takes away some of that grit and tenacity, because it's like, well, it's at my fingertips. I can just do this. And by the way, if this doesn't work, maybe I'll hop over here and do that. You can't do that. Obviously, you start a business, you better be all in up until the day you either sell for $1 trillion or lifestyle it, or, maybe it's a bad outcome. Let's not talk about that. But at the end of the day, you have to stay all in. And that may be a harder characteristic than most these days.
It's absolutely true. And I get the luxury of talking to startup owners, founders, and small business owners that share their journeys and talk about how sometimes in the beginning, to your point about the all in, and when you start a business, like really committing and putting yourself and your tenacity, your drive, your focus towards that. Many people, I think it's something like 30 to 40% of entrepreneurs start their business as a side project.
Okay.
And it can be really important that once you make that jump, you can't. It's like burning the ships. When you get to the other side, you're like, no, we're not going back. We have to make this work. But having that space beforehand, so once I get there, I'm happy where I am. That can be a really important piece for people as well. And I agree with you. If you're going into business ownership, you got to put your whole heart into it, because everybody else that owns a business, it's most of the time it's their life. It's either a passion project and they're already successful, or this is what the fuck they're doing.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And, think about this as well. You talk about burning the boats. I'll give you a great example. I knew this guy worked for a Fortune 500 company in Cleveland, Ohio. Fantastic technologist. Started this technology to do something. I'm not going to get too specific because I don't want to out this poor person. But he, had a couple of kids, had a job at a Fortune 500, making great money. He had this great technology. It just needed more love and attention. And I'll tell you what, this thing would have boomed. I'm telling you, this guy would have had a huge company. And he never burned the boat. He kept a little bit of the boat going, taking that nice paycheck in, and never was able to give it. And he shut this thing down maybe 2 years in, but the intellectual property was great. That is an exact example. And I think this guy, and I would never bring it up when I do see him, I think he kicks himself every night. Now, he still works for that Fortune 500, nice life, nice house, everybody's happy. But man, I think he just looks and says, I needed to burn the boat. I needed to be all in. And he was 70% in, but I don't care if you're 92% in, that 8% probably keeps you out, right? So I think that's a big deal.
I agree. What were you most interested in growing up? Because you're obviously driven, you have the tenacity. Where did that come from, and what were your goals as a kid?
Well, okay, so let's see. I grew up a Cleveland sports fan, so that'll make you keep
Tenacity.
being tenacious. because
Yeah.
we stunk my whole life. Every sport stunk growing up. But, hey, we got a little bit better.
Go Guardians.
Won a championship in 16, and the Guardians could have won one in 16 too, but damn Cubs. My dad came here to America from Italy during World War II. So, I think my brother and I looked at that mentality of this poor kid, like literally poor, orphan in Italy, comes to America, doesn't speak English, and he had to figure things out, man. Like, what else are you going to do? Like, he had to figure life out. Didn't have someone just shepherding him around. So, we were raised in a very different way. So you think about that tenacity, it's also then to overcome things like that you saw your dad go through or any parent go through, and then what yourself had to go through, right? I didn't grow up in a suburb, so to speak. I grew up in a pretty interesting part of town. I will tell you that. I think that is what kind of forges, what you do as a business owner. Somebody asked me the other day, like, would you ever retire? And I'm like, man, look at Warren Buffett, man. That dude's 99 and he is still maneuvering. Like that's if you love something, why do you have to retire? Maybe you can, instead of working 100 hours a week, maybe you can work 40 or 60. But man, if you're retired, what are you going to do? You're going to play tennis and golf all day? Like, I don't know if I'm wired to do that.
I absolutely agree. I think a part of entrepreneurship, and I even was thinking this while you were talking about your buddy who stayed with the Fortune 500 company. Part of entrepreneurship is that melding and that interweaving of you yourself and your life and how you support yourself, your income. And one of the things that was so important to me that called me to entrepreneurship was when I do something, when I commit to something, I put my whole self into it. So if I'm working for a corporation, if I'm working for another business, I'm building something spectacular with my energy and my time and my effort that may or may not be appreciated to the level or interested in to the level that I am. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're building something for yourself, when you're taking that energy you have for the thing that you love enough to go out there and risk for, you get to weave that into your life. And when I hear you say, maybe you go from working 100 hours a week to 40 or 60, it makes sense to me. Because when I go to the gym, and we were talking about this too, when I go to the gym in between sets, I do a little bit of work. When I'm playing a video game at the end of the night, I'll put a little bit of work up on my side screen, and in between turns, I'll get some things done. But it's because I love what I do. And I think that's the thing about entrepreneurship that really stands out to me is it allows the separation of work and yourself to dissolve. And you get to kind of be who you are in your career and in business naturally. And I freaking love that aspect of entrepreneurship.
Oh, it's a fantastic point. Well, think about, again, you and I were talking about this. Think about what you're doing with your life and moving. You're doing that for your business to grow your business. That's pretty much all in. Like you just don't
surprise everybody in the world.
Sorry if I wasn't
unannounced. That's okay. Oops. It's coming.
Okay. Maybe you're not doing that. Maybe you're.
I've moved many times.
The point is being all in. You are all in, right? And okay, you mentioned, man, during your workouts, you do work. That's pretty impressive. Maybe I should think about that. I listen to
baby.
I work out, and I'll hear something in a business podcast. I'm like, shit, man, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So I'm like, emailing this to myself. You know what I mean? The other day, I was driving to Columbus to do an AI event, and was listening to a podcast. I'm driving down, 71 and heard a great point. I'm like, man, I don't want to be this guy, but that's a great point. I had to make myself a note real quick because I'm old. I'll forget it. But you're absolutely right. You got to be all in, and you take those moments to get better every day of the week. And it does drive your business. I really believe that. I'm going to try the workout thing next, man. Zach, you got me on that one.
The podcast is self-improvement. It's the same thing.
Totally.
You as an entrepreneur, so when I was in the pizza world, if I had a general manager who was running one single store, every improvement that I did with them was an improvement on the business. If I was like, hey, maybe you said this way when you were coaching them. Maybe if you said it this way, you'd get a softer response. Or maybe, hey, X, Y, and Z with food cost. Or, hey, did you know if this, then? And if they learn something, then that part of the business is better. And the business is better. So when you're an entrepreneur, if you're at the gym listening to podcasts that make you a better human, you are improving your business because you are a leader in your business.
Yep, absolutely. And our executive team here always gets text. I work out very early in the morning. So 5:15, they'll get texts from me. I'm like, hey man, if it's sales, hey, listen to this thing and check it out around, minute 10. Or hey, Jillian, who runs marketing for us, man, check out this pod, check it out at minute 20. Great idea. And they're probably like, all right, dude, I'm sleeping and my thing's dinging here and I don't want to listen to your crap. But it's not just for me, it's certain aspects of our team and things they want to hear too. And not everybody can listen to a bazillion podcasts. I happen to like them. I listen to a lot. But if you can pound those out to the other people on your executive team, it goes a long way. It really does.
A couple pods you recommend or audiobook, anything that you would say?
I'm not an audiobook guy. I'm in an airplane a lot, so I like reading. But I will tell you, favorite pods, All In Pod, is just a great podcast. You got 4 billionaires talking about everyday business, and you can pick up a lot from that. Ted Seides, Capital Allocators, is just wonderful. It's a fantastic listen. The last one I'll say is 20 VC with Harry Stebbings. He generally brings on a CRO of the best SaaS or software companies. He had one today with the CRO of Datadog. I got to tell you, man, maybe the best I've ever heard. I took, 87 notes as I'm working out today. Like my workout today was terrible. I was just taking notes. It was the best one. So yeah, those are the three I just love. And then of course, the Rogan stuff, but I don't learn much there. I just like listening to that stuff.
People have a strong feelings one way or the other with that too. I always shy away from whenever somebody's like, what podcast do you listen to? I'm always like, Joe Rogan and other stuff. You know what I mean? Like try to go through it as quick as possible.
Yeah.
I don't want to debate I don't want to be somebody to suggest that I'm one way,
Yeah.
or,
no debates here.
Yeah.
This is what I like listening to. If you don't like it, no worries. You don't have to listen to it.
Yeah. I always say the way that I dance around the Rogan thing is I always say this. He always has really unique and interesting guests, and I'm able to pick what I want to listen to. If I want to listen to a science podcast, if I want to learn about archaeology, if I want to talk about aliens, if I want to hear a comedian, I love Dave Chappelle. I love Elon Musk.
He's got them all. He's got them all. And, the other day he had the guys on the ancient civilizations.
I'm halfway through it.
I'll listen to that all day long. That's
hell yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good one for the gym, and that's one at the gym you can work on the iPad too, because you're like, well, it's throwaway information.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, exactly.
So artificial intelligence, compliance, and cybersecurity are three things that I think you could say separate from each other are really complicated topics. And you guys are kind of and when I say complicated, I mean deep knowledge, deep information, lots of depth there. And you guys are kind of engaging in all three at a pretty high level and in the startup space. How did you get a depth of knowledge to be able to lead in this cross section?
I think like anything else, man, you just got to dive in and you got to study, right? When we started AgileBlue, the goal was, and this was in 2020, the goal was an autonomous security operations platform. Well, the word autonomous is pretty nebulous. That can mean a ton of things. But after ChatGPT launched and the proliferation of AI and LLMs started really becoming, the talk of the town, the talk of Wall Street, the talk of everything, we looked at how that's going to impact our business and we just dove in, right? And how do you dive in as a technologist? You implement. You don't go to school. You don't go to, the way we think. You don't go to a class. You just start implementing and you stub your toe and you build. And we're whatever 4 years in now, 4 years plus in, and I got to tell you, man, AI has done a huge differentiator for our company. More importantly, for our customers, and we worked really hard to get there, and we're going to continue to work really hard to become better. But man, this, Zach. I don't care if it's pizza or AI or whatever. You got to dive in, man. You got to dive in. It's the only way to put 5,000 pieces of pepperoni or 4,175. You got to do it, and you got to see how your customers are reacting and liking it and working with it. So that's it. You got to dive in.
Where did you so you dove in? Did you started with Apple, you went to a startup, you were supporting in the sale process from the more technical side. So you came stock to this part of your career with some technical expertise. Would you say that you were stronger in cybersecurity and that technical domain, or what would you say your keystone strength was that allowed you to say, we need to push really hard in this space, in this
Yeah.
direction?
Definitely not cybersecurity. My two businesses before were we had an e-commerce platform that company was acquired back in '08, and then started a company called vloan.com, which was obviously an online mortgage type of marketplace. So not necessarily cyber. I think my where I have a little bit of skill set is being able to understand a market from a sales perspective and then get products into that market. That's kind of how I think. You got to pair yourself though with the people who are super smart in whatever you're getting into. So we paired ourselves with fantastic, super smart people in cybersecurity,
Mm.
and then obviously as we start bringing AI in, more of that talent. That's how you blend people who know how to take a product to market with the specific market you're trying to achieve. And that's where that's where that 1+1, I know it's a stupid cliche, but does equal 3, because you bring in market plus product. Now you got product market fit. Now you're ready to roll. You don't have just a bunch of sales guys or a bunch of engineers. You got that nice mix.
I love that. I love that just from the perspective, excuse me, let me say that better. I love that not just from the perspective of a cybersecurity or AI related company, but really any business. You should be taking people with strengths and skill domains, building process and expectation, letting them own what they're the best at, and then building the next piece of your business. And
Totally.
a lot of the times in the startup world and in small business world, which I love both, and they're very similar, but they're very different in some interesting ways too. I see very often the founder or the small business owner be so passionate about what the business itself is, because that's what motivated them into entrepreneurship, that they
Mm-hmm.
struggle to let go of pieces of the operation that would allow it to scale if only they could give it away.
Yep. It's a great point. And when you see companies that had that promise and that maybe fizzle out, it is that, right? Not bringing in an executive team, take it to the next level. Look, founders are great at getting the company going and the passion and building that culture. But as you grow and need to scale, sometimes you need to bring in professionals who've been there, done that, gotten to those big numbers, and you need to let them take that, whatever that part of the business is, and let them go. With a lot of founders, it's sales. When do you bring in that first VP? When do you move from VP to CRO? That is a huge step for most companies. And the companies that get that right, boom. And the companies that don't maybe tend to struggle a little bit. How hard is that though? I mean, you ran businesses. How hard is it to go out and say, hey, we need X talent because we just don't have it and we need to get to that next level, right?
Well, it's scary on two accounts. One, there's the feeling of uh, what if they don't do it well enough?
Right.
Giving something away. And then the second is, if you haven't managed people at a really high level before, you may not know really what it is that you need from a hire. And so the fear can be in two spots. One, if I give this away, is it going to be done properly? And the answer at the beginning, here's the secret, is no. It's not going to get done right. It's not going to get done to your quality, because
Right.
they have to learn. And if you're so afraid of that gap that you can't get through it, then you won't get through it, and you'll be the one doing it forever. So that's a fear feeling that has to be overcome, partially through communication. Hey, here's some coaching. This is why this wasn't good enough. And if you are afraid of things not being done right, or if you're afraid of tough conversations, or if you're afraid of hurting feelings and you're never able to do that, then if you do give something away, it does fall apart, and it
Yep.
doesn't improve. So there's some things there. And then it's also challenging, to your point, because what the hell do I actually need?
Right.
Wait, do I start, like you said, do I start with the sales guy? Do I start with marketing? What do I know? it can be a big challenge for many founders, and in the IT space too, especially when you start to think about regulation and cybersecurity, where there's a big knowledge, there's a large swath of knowledge that could be had from how am I going to deal with businesses from a regulatory perspective to the nuts and bolts of setting up a fucking firewall, which are really complicated things. What's the right person to bring on at this moment? And it's tricky. Scaling is hard.
Scaling is hard. Scaling freaks people out. But I think one of the problems with entrepreneurs, they'll make the decision and they'll think, hey, we got to boom, we got to grow, we got to scale. But I don't think sometimes they want to, or they think if I build it, it'll come, right? I think, Kevin Costner's movie, great movie, but that unfortunately that slogan is gone forever, right? If you build it, they'll come. I don't think, business works like that, right? You could build it, but you better go out and find them and bring them. Like they're not just going to come to you these days, right? Mm-hmm. I think that is a big deal to understand how to go out and build, those markets and entrepreneurs. They look at Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk and, okay, there's 1 out of a trillion, right? Those types of guys. How many guys are under that didn't get to that level, right? And the ones who did know how to bring in other executives. How can Elon Musk be CEO of 5 companies, now be part of this Doge committee to go out and make the government spend less money? It's because he's got people at Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, everything is Starlink, everything else he's got that are running that company, but his vision is guiding them, right? More entrepreneurs need that. None of us can be Elon Musk. There's one of those dudes. But if we have a vision and we know how to get there, go out and get the right guys who know you can lead it. Now you just got to lead them. You don't have to manage them. No one needs to be micromanaged. You just got to lead them. Lead them with the vision and let them go do what they're really good at.
Great team members will follow leadership because they're motivated.
100%. 100%. I'm sure you saw it a ton in franchising too.
Constantly. Well, because people want to be, I've said this, I've maybe done 15 fucking podcasts. I've probably said this on half of them. 10% or 20% of people will do a good job and want to do a good job. 10% of people will set you on fire if you give them the opportunity, no matter how you treat them or what you do. 70% of people are going to fall in the direction the culture of your company leans and the structure and support of the leadership. And if you can get good people in that are highly motivated, which is typically what you do from a leadership team perspective, right? Your staff is generally 70%ers, and God, let's get as many of them to fall into the good side as possible. You want to hire 20%ers for your leadership. And if you have a 20%er, you don't need to be up their fucking ass. They will go lead them. They'll go do a good job. But you have to put the right aces in their places. You don't want to put somebody that needs to be led in a leadership position.
Yeah, 100%. You want people who are going to go and that just need that to understand that vision from you. You're absolutely right. I love those numbers, man. Set you on fire. Never thought about that one. I think there's more.
They'll set you on fire.
My percentage might be higher, but
yeah, I'm sure in industries, I'm sure it wavered. So, tell me a little bit about how AI is going to impact, and this may be too broad of a question, but how AI is going to impact cybersecurity and governance. From my perspective, governance is a largely human activity.
Yeah, I think to some extent. Look, it's already happening, and we actually just saw it with this past election over the last, 3 weeks, obviously many months leading up to that. AI is taken over from a social engineering perspective, right? A lot of folks don't understand that email phishing has gone up. Text messages. How many text messages did you get during this race? It was insane. And a lot of it's junk with links. But how many people click on those links? Obviously a lot.
Accidentally, even with you get that much volume. It's like, shit, I dropped my phone and freaking, it was like Sonic got knocked down and a bunch of coins blew out of the damn.
That's exactly right. But see, here's the crazy part. The AI knows I'm not a big social media guy. I'm on LinkedIn. I read Twitter, but I don't have all that other stuff. Yeah. People who do have more surface attack with social media. AI is learning your tonality. It understands how you type and think. So when I send a phishing text or a phishing email, meaning the AI is acting like me. It sounds like me, looks like me. There's also things like deep fakes. There's also audio fakes that are fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the biggest scams we've seen, how many times does your cell phone ring and you say, hello, hello, can you hear me? And it just goes dead. A lot of those aren't wrong numbers. A lot of those are just understanding your voice patterns, and then they're able to use it to say, hey, Tony, this is Bob. Next payroll, I need you to move my paycheck. I get a bunch of those. Obviously, I don't run our payroll, so obviously I know these are fakes. But I'm telling you, this stuff happens, and it happened a lot during the election, right? And now that the election's obviously over, you're going to see it just proliferate into business. That AI is revolutionizing how bad actors are going after businesses, individuals, whatever, not just for ransomware, but also disruption. They want to disrupt businesses, supply chain disruption, whether that's defense manufacturers trying to get bolts that hold missiles together, all the way to maybe even franchises to send the pizza sauce and the cheese over to Domino's. The whole point is, can they disrupt? And you're seeing a lot of that, and AI is making it so much easier because it looks like us, it sounds like us, and it types like us. And that's pretty darn scary. So by the way, last thing I'll say, I know I'm rambling. How do you defeat AI? You can only defeat AI if you have AI. So you got, the bad guys got it. The good guys got to harness it as well.
I love that. So many amazing points there. The thing that jumped out to me is I read an article, it may have been at the beginning of this week or the last week. There was a new AI defense tool released. It was AI Grandma. Did you see this?
No, I did not.
AI Grandma. So this is a tool that's being used as a defense tactic against scam callers. So it's an AI Grandma programmed to waste time for scam call, people that are trying to take advantage of elderly people. And this is something that's close to my heart because I've got a handful of grandmas that I love. And my God, it's like somebody needs to protect these. They have no way of gaining, not no way, but they have significantly less access to information to be able to protect and defend themselves. And many elderly people are without families that give a shit about them and all these different sad things. And I love this tool.
Great. Sounds awesome.
It's your point on the you've got to have AI to protect yourself as well. And now it's just not as explicit as other ways you can protect yourself with AI, but it's just interesting how the different how the ecosystem is evolving, how the landscape is evolving.
Yeah, a lot of people do not understand. Let's just say the majority of people don't understand. The more you do with social media, that's everywhere, right? From personal stuff like TikTok into business stuff like LinkedIn. And by the way, LinkedIn these days isn't like, check out this great article. It's way more video, audio, personalized stuff. It's kind of getting a little interesting how LinkedIn is getting to be less business focused and a little bit more is not cool with me. But, the bad guys know how to harness that data and they are using it. So I totally feel for the elderly. And of course, there's going to be elderly abuse when it comes to scams, which stinks. It's terrible. But I also feel for the younger generation. Why? They just trust everything digital. They just trust it. Like, oh, well, it's on Instagram. It's got to be true. Last night I was watching the Browns Steelers game because I didn't go to it like you. And it was on Amazon Prime. And you're watching Amazon Prime game. Commercial pops up, says, click here. We'll send you a text. I've never done that. So I wanted to see it. So I clicked here, text on my phone in 4 milliseconds, trying to sell me a Nissan. And I'm like, my goodness. Yeah. Okay, so that technology is just too trusting. It knows my account, knows my cell phone, obviously. You think about Netflix recently, right? The Tyson fight. It had whatever bazillion people. I have a 19-year-old daughter who doesn't like boxing at all. She's in college. She watched the Tyson fight. Why? Because it was the most famous thing going on, right? Everybody was watching the Tyson fight. Well, as more and more of those profiles become evident, it's just more and more attack surface to come get these young folks. And it's all because of the phones, right? It's just at our fingertips. And that's really, so the elderly I feel bad about, but I'm telling you, man, the youngsters, they got to get their stuff together. They just trust everything digital. That's not a good thing.
I agree with you. I've had some conversations with a good friend of mine, John Robertson, about the future of artificial intelligence and about decentralized AI specifically. Awesome. I love the idea of, rather than us having, let me get this right. I like the idea that I may someday have an artificial intelligence system that is unique to me and privately mine.
Mhm.
When I'm listening to you talk about the edges of the bell curve of our age distribution with the elderly and young people, and how there is a or an overdeveloped sense of trust, and then a lack of ability to properly protect themselves. I get the sense that having a tool that's specifically designed to be yours and protect you from an artificial intelligence perspective surely is something that is coming and is interesting, and um, would be valuable. I'd love for you, as an industry leader, and an expert in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, to just talk a little bit about what you think the future should look like, or could look like, or even will look like, as it relates to systems use of artificial intelligence, and where ownership of that lies, or where it should lie.
Yeah. Look, that's a great question. And I think I can give you two interesting examples. One, let's start from an individual perspective, right? Everything starts with a phone. Okay. We all know that.
Is yours
So
green also?
what's that?
Is yours green also?
No. Mine's
Oh,
black.
shoot.
Yeah. I'm
Never
boring, man. I'm the regular black model. Okay, think about it like this. Apple's AI, right? It's going to run pretty much through Siri, right? And Siri knows what you do and what you don't do, and that's both good and bad, right? Siri knows probably a little too much about you, right? But it's also a good thing that Siri knows a little too much, good about you. So will Siri protect you, like proactively protect you from doing something that you probably shouldn't be doing, right? Um, you try to click something, and maybe Siri doesn't allow you to do that. Maybe you get mad because you do want to click it, and you're trying to fight with AI. I think you're going to see AI very personalized. And the way to personalize it is to understand, obviously, the way people interact, the way people do things. There's no better place to start than directly on their devices that pay, take pictures, click through, whatever it does. And phone, obviously. Well, did people call anymore? I don't think so. No,
I
we'll
love
just
when
say
people call me.
no one calls anymore. I wish, but no one calls. So I think you're going to see that number. So that's that perspective. Let me give you another perspective. Businesses. Our AI is built to detect anomalous behavior to an individual business, not to every one of our customers. So if you have 500 customers, you don't have one AI that's governing it. You have an AI that knows this customer, one that knows this customer, one that knows this customer. It could be in the same industries, different industries, doesn't matter. It just knows how all those employees act. It knows how the firewall works. It knows how all the endpoints work, the cloud, and it just works its magic to understand that anomalous. And if something happens, to identify it, tag it, and then auto respond to hopefully shut it down. And if not shut it down, at least mitigate. You want to talk about compliance. Sometimes with compliance, it's not about stopping cyber attacks. It's about mitigating the risk, right? Because you can't stop everything. So how do you mitigate that risk? We focus specifically on each individual customer, knowing everything about them so we can stop when things start looking a little odd. Kind of similar to what your phone will do, because it knows you, it knows me, it knows my grandma, but it's not just taking a generalized approach. I think that's where you're getting or going with AI when it comes specifically to scamming and cybersecurity type things.
Very cool. Would you speak a little bit about AI's role with regulation, specifically, with it being, so I'll go into a little bit more detail. Something like CIS controls, which are highly technical and are really easy to measure,
Mhm.
vary or are largely different from something like CMMC or NIST in some of its deeper versions that have human behaviors that are required to be done. Like, did you check this box? Did you do a background check? Did you, have this type of conversation? Are there processes in place for X, Y, and Z? Is there monthly, annually, quarterly follow up? Those are things that can be hard to measure immediately, and they can
Mhm.
also be hard to measure with their variability across time. So when we start to think about things like cyber insurance and regulation and expectations of businesses around cybersecurity, AI is going to have a big role, but it's largely human behaviors in about 60%, 66% of cybersecurity. So how do you see AI fitting in on the regulatory side, or the governance side, where there's lots of human activity that has to be considered?
Yeah, it's a great point. So let's start with regulation overall. In fact, in this morning's Wall Street Journal, there's a really interesting article. I can't remember who wrote it. Again, I'm old; my memory fails me sometimes. But it's a really interesting article on don't overregulate AI, so it can help then regulate things you need it to do. And the things that you see is politicians are talking about it, right? And politicians, these aren't technologists, and some of them aren't even born in a decade that's even around my generation, let alone anybody younger generation. And these are the folks that are trying to maybe put some shackles on it to maybe make AI work a certain way or regulate it a certain way. I think that is extraordinarily dangerous. So I think it needs to be a lot more open, unless it's built to do evil. So then you can use it for compliance and regulation. So think about this: when you think about some of those frameworks you brought up, CMMC or NIST or anything you want to take, or maybe get specific into industries like HIPAA on healthcare, FFIEC when it comes to financial services. Obviously, CMMC is going to be huge with the Department of Defense, as long as Doge doesn't cut all that stuff. Well, I guess we'll see. But the whole point is, can AI not just fake, but maybe verify that the things you're saying you're doing are actually being done? And
Mm.
that's something we can actually see as a verification method. Now, here's where that's great. If you're doing these things, like we just went through our ISO 27001, and it was a very intense process, took the better part of a year. Maybe that's a little bit of a lie, 9 months, but it was pretty intense, right? There's so many areas in there, though, that could have completely been automated with AI. I don't see anybody doing those right now. But I think there's a lot of room for that. You're totally going to see that. Now, that's going to put pressure on the organizations that rely on those audits, those certification processes, which all businesses evolve. But how can AI do that? AI can read and understand and summarize and verify more than a human can with less bias in a structured way. So
Yeah.
you think that is going to have a huge play when it comes to regulations and compliance very soon.
I'm really grateful that you shared that. And as you were talking, I was thinking about what you were saying and seeing maybe a couple of potential options. One, it sounds like maybe you could utilize artificial intelligence in the question, the process where you're taking in information. So if it's a, let's say, NIST, and there's some human questions or some technical questions and some process based questions, I guess the artificial system could ask follow up questions like, well, how did the meeting go? When was it had? And similar to what an actual auditor would do to verify knowledge. The second thought that I had is, if we're utilizing artificial systems to do that, what we're likely to be able to get, because there are statistics and probability based tools, is you're probably able to get some kind of idea as to how accurate the information is. So,
Totally.
or how well done the human processes were. So, like, yeah, we did have our annual meeting, but we cut it short, and we didn't get into the conversation about cybersecurity. Like, that happens, right?
Sure.
Now, if you're able to get into that level of granularity with the artificial intelligence system on how well processes are being executed, that's going to give insurers and cyber insurance people and um, a better line of confidence, because you're getting into the granularity on the probability. I don't know if I delivered that super clearly.
No, you did. No, you did, but think about it like this. I'll give you a real life example. Say you have to have an incident response plan as part of your audit process. And you say, yeah, we got an incident response plan. The auditor looks at it like, check.
Right.
Incident response plan is horrible. What happens if it was just something you took off Google, hit copy and hit paste and change the font?
Exactly.
Think about what AI can do. Not only can it look at it and say, this document's junk or this document's good, it can also then look at your meeting minutes and say, you have an IRP plan, but you've never tested it because nothing in here says, did the IRP today, everything checked out. It can compare that. Can a human do that? Sure, but how long is it going to take them? And B, will they skip maybe that verification part? Probably.
Right. Well, and you have tools like Fathom and
Yeah.
some of those other artificial intelligence tools. If you have a company that's utilizing those tools and then we get back to the centralized or the decentralized AI, where I'm a business that's making an AI tool for my company, and if you're utilizing it for your meeting minutes, and if you're utilizing it for your task follow-ups, and if you're utilizing it for your audit and certification prep, then it knows what happened in the meeting, and it knows that you canceled the meeting in Q4 and you didn't actually go and do the tabletop, and it knows that you're spending X on tools for cybersecurity. It knows the staff, and you're able to kind of get a more full, robust look at the data that we as humans aren't able to hold all at once in our minds and then communicate to another human that's going to go live their fucking life.
Totally. Well, think about this. Human beings, we have bad days. We have days where we're kind of half-assing it. We have days where we maybe stayed up a little too late watching football, and then we're kind of like not.
I'm struggling with my questions.
Yeah, no, but think about it. AI is not going to have a bad day. It has the same day. So it's always at top of its game, right? So I think a lot of these types of roles, and by the way, I do not think AI is a job killer. Let me just say, okay, it can automate what we just said, and you say, well, those auditors are going to be out of jobs. No, they're not. Those are smart people. They're going to be repositioned to do more strategic things, more challenging things. Some of that mundane workflow, that can be automated. Let's automate it. You know why? Those guys don't want to do the mundane anyway. That's what makes them go home on a Friday and say, thank God it's Friday.
Right.
If they can do more challenging stuff, maybe we have more job satisfaction as well in all aspects of life. So I think AI is that. I don't think it's the job killer, nor do I think it comes back and chops my head off. It might in 2147. I'll be dead by then, so I don't care.
Maybe not.
At the end of the day, I think it's additive to what we do. It's not like we should fear it at this stage.
I agree completely. What would you hope to see happen with regulation as we go forward around cybersecurity? It sounded like you said AI being less and utilizing it to help, but are there other angles on regulation that you feel like are important for people to hear?
Look, at the end of the day, I just think we need to get out of the way. We need to appoint smart groups of people from business, not from government, to put some parameters around what's good and bad. I'll give you an example as well. Take AI with cars and take Tesla FSD and what Google's got going on with Waymo. That's AI at a level that is life and death, right? I mean, if a car crashes into you. Now, how many human beings have crashes? A lot of them. Will FSD crash? Sure. But I will guarantee you it's going to be at a way lower clip. But, the local newspaper, even if they're around anymore, isn't going to write an article about somebody getting hit. They're definitely going to write one about Tesla running over someone, right? So it's a lot of that is just what's being shown. But you get out and let the business leaders, the owners, the people who understand this stuff, the AI smart people, and let them build some guardrails and parameters around things. It can't be put at the other levels because that's going to stifle innovation. And when you stifle innovation, now you got big problems.
Completely agree. I'm going to make one last point, and then I want you to give us some information about AgileBlue. So you made the point about stifling information and making the decision at the right place. Let the smart people that understand the systems take the first draft, right? And I've talked about this on the podcast a lot. I was a part of a leadership and skills development program that was focused on the idea that if you want to make decisions at a high level for an organization, you need to understand what's happening in the business units themselves. And that looked like me learning how to make pizzas and learning how to prep a store and run a rush and then supervise a large scale system where they were all doing that. And then as I was making decisions for my large scale team, I understood what the outcome of the decision that I was making was going to be because I'd been there myself. And the reason that I draw this distinction in this moment is we want the people that are in the stores, AKA the AI experts, telling us what needs to happen in the store so that people in government who have no idea or maybe are starting to learn, and I hope as we continue to move forward in the future, more highly educated people with these expertise will find interest in politics because I think it's important. But
Great.
we need to ensure that I lost my fucking train of thought there, but we need to
solid. I got it.
we need to ensure that people that are making the decisions around regulation understand what's happening there, and it isn't the people right now in government. So
not at all.
Tell us a little bit about AgileBlue, and if somebody that's an IT service provider or a small business or whomever would like to understand the value or how to work with you, how they could do that.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I know we're getting tight on time, so I'll be quick. So AgileBlue is an AI-based security operations platform. What that means is 24/7, we are monitoring endpoints, network, cloud, user behaviors to understand where there's anomalous behavior, determine if it's a potential cyber attack, and then somehow stop it or mitigate it, right, through response. AI allows us to do that. So we have AI that's automated level 1, level 2 of what's called a SOC, a Security Operations Center, to do the monitoring, the investigations, and more importantly, the decisioning. Is this malicious or benign? And if it's malicious, what should we do? Shut this down, block this IP, disable this account, and let the technology do that. And by the way, we've got a 24/7 team then that can look at what happened and then figure out those next steps in terms of incident response. That's what we do. We built an AI-based SecOps platform. We have partners that take it to market in a white label way, but we're a platform provider. And look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of great technologies out there, but the newer attacks are going to be AI-based. So you need AI to beat AI, like we talked a little bit about. And if anybody has any questions, agileblue.com, very simple. Always willing to talk to anybody about it.
Great. Tony, thanks so much for being here today. Thanks for folks that joined the conversation. Next week, we're going to have Reza from The Power of Play on for a conversation about how regular play and fun can help child development and can also help your teams develop and yourself develop. So thank you guys. Have a great weekend. Tony, thank you again for sharing your expertise and can't wait to talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you, sir. Have a good weekend. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks.